Converting to video voice. Welcome to class, everybody. This is Web Programming 1, our very first day in fall semester of 2021. Most of you are here in the room with me following the Web Developer Orientation class. And ideally, you are taking that section of the orientation along with this. And as I was mentioning before, if you're taking the classes with different instructors, you might want to talk to the other instructor and see if there's a way that you can work out that you're taking them both at the same time. Makes a lot of sense. This is a little bit longer class than the previous. We are running in what we call a blended format. And our blended format here is what we call a 3-1 format. Not that that means much to you, but what that means is we will have 3 hours in the classroom together each week and then 1 hour online. And the online portion really comes mostly in the form of like watching the videos and performing the activities. Now, I will also, and I'm just putting this out there for everybody, following this session, this ends at 1:30. At 2 p.m., I start my online Zoom support sessions for my full stack accelerated students, people who are taking the same courses at 3 times the speed, right? And I don't know what my turnout will be there, but you're always welcome to hang out if you need more help and come to the session and sit on it. I will be here in the room. And if you need help with anything specific, I'm more than happy to do that. In terms of the start and the end dates, well, we start today and we end on Monday, December 12th. Next week is a holiday, so we will not be here in the classroom together. However, as I mentioned in the previous class, that does not mean that we will suspend instruction. Instruction will continue. We will just pretend like, hey, well, we weren't in the class, but all the materials and everything press forward. Fortunately, it's at the beginning of the semester, so it's pretty light stuff for right now. And then if there's questions on anything in the interim, we can circle back to it on the following Monday. That'll be pretty typical. We will be meeting in this room throughout the semester. My Zoom link is listed here. It's also in the course shell right at the top of the home page. If you do need to get a hold of me, my email address is there, and as I mentioned in the previous course, email is my preferred method of communication for a lot of different reasons. If you need to reach me by phone, the phone number is listed, as is my office room number, which is right down the hall, and you take that left to go to the front, and the door on the right there is my office. And if you ever need to meet with me, you can either come during office hours or contact me and set up an appointment and we can Zoom together or meet in person. I do kind of split my time between campuses. So I teach in the Web Software Developer Program, which all of you are enrolled in, which is located here at the Racine campus and online. Really interesting fact about that program is about 80% of our students are online only. They never come to the classroom and they don't Zoom. So they do what we call asynchronous instruction. Which does not work for everybody. So I assume that most of you are here in person because you prefer to go to school in person, right? And that was always me too. Even though we've been kind of Zooming well before the pandemic ever came into play. So whenever you take web courses, and you guys should know this as you move through the program, the web courses tend to be more of an evening program, especially when you get to the tail end of the program. So why do we have so many of our students that are strictly online? Because that doesn't work for them. Right? So like, hey, I'd rather go to school during the day, but there's no offering, so I'm doing online. But whenever we have those online offerings, most of them are connected to a regular offering, and usually the teacher will allow you to Zoom to the classroom if you want. And so that we've been doing that here in the web program now for about a decade. So when the pandemic happened, we were like, okay, let's just Zoom from home, instead of Zooming from the classroom. That was all that changed for us, so that's kind of an interesting fact. All right, let's talk a little bit about the course. This course is, arguably maybe one of the most important courses you're going to take in your web developer program because it establishes the baseline web skills that you need to build everything on top of. The two main technologies you're going to learn are HTML and CSS. And so HTML builds the structure and content of a web page or application, and CSS does the styling and behavioral components of web page. There's a third real key web technology called JavaScript that you will take in a separate course, but we will brush against it a little bit at the tail end of the course. We used to put a lot more into JavaScript into Web Programming 1, then decided that we'd rather have real strong HTML and CSS skills here, and then you can take JavaScript in the second course and make those skills really strong as well. Typically, the JavaScript course that follows this will happen in your next semester. And so typically spring semester is when you will take that one. We don't need really too many special tools for this class. That's kind of an interesting thing. Web work can happen on just about any platform, ironically. I mean, I've seen people author web pages on the phone. Not that I recommend it. You can do it. I've seen people author web pages on Chromebooks. Not highly recommended. Right? You really do need to have a full-blown computer system. Here on campus, we tend to be very Windows-centric, right? Why? Why are we Windows-centric?
90% of the world uses Windows.
Yeah, and actually even higher. You know, it's more like 95% of the people who touch a computer on a daily basis are on a Windows platform. And so when we teach people how to program for computers or support them, I mean, it's going to be very Windows-centric. Now, if you are a Mac person, fear not. You can do all the work in this class on your Mac. I'm a multi-platform person, so at home I've got a Mac and a PC and a bunch of other different machines too. Linux machines, servers, Raspberry Pi, yada yada yada. In many ways, when I was working professionally, I actually preferred to do web work on a Mac for a lot of different reasons. Back in the old days, mostly because the screen resolutions were so much better on a Mac than on a PC. And I just like the workflow better on the Mac. Now, I do most of my stuff now on a PC, and I do have some equipment requirements that we'll talk about as we kind of move forward into the program. So you will take certain courses, not so much at the beginning, but when you get into your later semesters, that will really tax your equipment. So like your off-the-shelf, like $300 laptop from Walmart is not going to cut it for this program. You really need something with significantly more horsepower, and I'll give you specs in just a little bit. But you do need to have some sort of a modern, full-blown computer system. Mac, PC, or Linux machine will work. You know, so I know I do get people who come in that run Linux. That's absolutely fine. You don't need any real special software. You do need to be internet connected. You do want a good broadband connection. And any of the software that we use in this class will be available for free. You can also opt to use paid software if you want, and I do get people that do that. For example, I'm a big fan of using the Adobe Creative Suite, but we do not require students to use that, but I will demonstrate it. Because Dreamweaver, even though it's fallen out of favor a little bit in the web world, is still most designers' tool of choice when it comes to doing higher-end work. All right, let's talk about the textbook, because this book that we use, we've been using here for quite a while, and it's a really well-written book. Usually, Wendy Revolinsky and I are the ones that are teaching this Web Programming 1 class, and we're huge fans of this author. She actually, I don't know where she originated from, but she is currently a Wisconsin resident, which is kind of neat. So when you look at some of the case studies that she does, you're like, that sounds like a place in Wisconsin. Well, it is. So she uses like Wisconsin examples in some of her case studies, which I think is kind of cool. And it's a very well-written book in terms of the fact that she gives a lot of good background. It's very clearly written and easy to read. The examples are clear and concise, and she provides really great resources. I've also taught on this book for quite a while now. We just switched to the 10th edition. And here's the first thing I'm going to tell you guys. If you don't have your book yet, get it in a hurry. Do not wait. And my strong recommendation is, and if I looked on WebAdvisor, they're only offering e-book rental versions. Is that what you guys are experiencing with that? Okay. I've been told there are ways to get hard copies, even though even for me, they're not providing a hard copy. So I use a service called Red Shelf to get this book. And not because this is a service I chose, but because the publisher publishes their stuff on this platform. Now, if you go through WebAdvisor or the bookstore to get this book, they will give you their ebook platform. And you can see the book just comes up on screen like this. And there'll be times where I do bring the book up on the screen. But this is the book that we're shooting for. What I really like about this book, aside from the author being from Wisconsin, is the way that she organizes the topics. You can see here in the sidebar what the topics are. And so today, I'm hoping that we can get most of the way through the first chapter of content. So we'll talk about like the history of the internet, what the internet is, how it works, and with any luck, we'll even start to code a little bit, which is always cool. Get your hands on and get into it. But if you look at the topic stream here, we very quickly move from like the basic HTML, learn CSS, start doing graphics, talk about web design and page layout, talk about responsive design, tables, forms, multimedia, web development as an overview, talk about e-commerce and promotional aspects of the web, and then we do a real quick brush on JavaScript. And so this is one of these books, and I know that it can get a little pricey. And I see you have a hard copy. So how did you get your hard copy? So it was a while ago.
No, it was recent. I think I got from the bookstore.
Okay.
I don't remember.
So there is such a thing as a hard copy of the book, and we have proof right here because we can see it. But you do want to get that book because what will happen is we will go through every chapter in the book. We're going cover to cover on it, and I'm a big believer that if you're spending all this money on a book, you may as well use it. Yes, Randy.
Should we get the hardcover or
Well, I'm going to let you decide that, financially, like what you want to do. Usually when you buy the hard copy, it can be pretty expensive. Do you remember what you paid for yours, Matt? No. Yeah, I was going to say, it's pretty expensive. You might want to go with the rental. Now, and let me tell you why. When you buy stuff for technology, right, today this is relevant, right? Today we're using HTML5, that's our standard. A few years from now, it might not be, and you've put all this money into the book, $200-300 into the book, probably not a wise investment. Probably better to rent it, send it back, and then what you're going to realize pretty quickly is most of the materials, if you ever need to look something up as a reference, the internet's going to be your resource. The cool thing about being a web developer is there's nobody who's online more than web developers, so we put all our stuff out there, and it's been that way for a long time. In fact, to the point where we've even had discussions like, do we really need a textbook? So that's kind of the thing. My argument is we do because a textbook kind of like packages it all up and explains it nicely, and it augments what I do in the classroom. So my expectation every week will be that, if I say, hey, we're going into chapter 2 next week, read chapter 2, and hopefully before you come to class, right? And then I will lecture on it, demonstrate on it, and then we'll work on stuff based on that chapter. That will be kind of the pattern for this class. The reason we make this a 3-hour class, by the way, rather than a 2-hour class like most of ours, is to give you that little extra bit of time and support to get stuff done. So there might be times where, as we go through the semester, we're like, well, you know what? We did everything we need to do. You guys can go. It might be the situation. And other times we might even spill over because we're so into whatever we're doing. So it just kind of depends on what your situation is. But make sure you get a copy of that. Pretty important that you have it and have it quickly. Now let's talk about other editions. Right now we're on the 10th edition. And as you can see from Matt's book, it's white and it's got kind of like various blue colors on it. That's the edition we prefer that you have. However, if you find a 9th edition or an 8th edition even, heck, even a 7th edition, the materials are almost identical. They just basically have done corrections in the book and updated the case studies. So if you find a 9th edition and you can get it really cheap, hey, go for it. is kind of my thinking. The one thing that happens, and Matt, do you mind if I just take a really quick look at the book? Yeah, when you buy a hard copy of a book, one advantage that you get, and this is a rental edition, so this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the scratch code. You don't have that. So like, like when you get a lottery ticket and they have those little things that you scratch off, right? They sometimes have those on the inside covers of the book so that you can get the code to access the publisher's website. And the rental versions usually don't have that, but we do provide all that stuff inside the course shell. And I'm just getting the impression here that maybe it's not even necessary anymore. We'll figure that out. So if you get a 9th edition and the code is already scratched off and somebody used it, not a big deal. Go for whatever's cheapest. Is kind of my thinking. So I kind of don't care which version you use. 10th is what you're supposed to use. If you're on financial aid and getting it through the bookstore, just go down there and get whatever they have. Is my suggestion. But don't wait. For my money, I am a huge fan of paper. Like when it comes to reading books, but it's a pain to lug a book around. They're heavy. You can damage them, whatever. So consider going to maybe an ebook format. It's kind of weird to read a book on screen, but you do get used to it. And you know what? If you have a web browser, you can get to it from anywhere. You can pull it up on your phone, your tablet, your PC, whatever, and be reading. All right. Back to the syllabus. All right, the competencies of the stuff that we're going to learn here. So this list here, when we say course competencies, these are the things you're supposed to walk away with when you're done with the course. So you're supposed to be able to explain website principles, differentiate client-side languages and tools, analyze web marketing design concepts, create basic web pages, create cascading style sheets, develop web pages with multimedia, with tables that connect to a database, employ image techniques on a web page, look at e-commerce systems, test web pages for usability, and explain web page security issues. And this is what the course is designed to do. And some of this, gets pretty in-depth, and some of it is just kind of a brush upon the topics. It just kind of depends. And usually it's that action verb at the beginning that kind of drives it. As we mentioned with the first course, I don't grade on attendance, but I do grade on participation. And participation is 15% of your total score. You'll notice one little difference here with the point values, and that is we also have exams in the mix here. So this course does have tests. There's a midterm exam and a final exam, each worth 5% of your total grade. Not a whole lot. I do want to make this really clear statement right straight up from the beginning. I had a student, it was probably about 2 years ago now, came into class. It seemed like they were on topic or on task or whatever, and pretty smart, but not turning in homework, right? And not doing any of the assignments. Aced the midterm, got an A on it, and then emailed me after midterm grades posted and said, Ty, why did I get an F? I got an A on the midterm. I'm like, because you didn't do any homework. You have to do the homework, folks. Homework is not an option. We are a do-it school, so if you don't do the homework, you're not going to pass this class. You got to do the work. So don't make the mistake of thinking that if you do really well in the test, it will supersede everything else. That's not how it works. The tests are 5 points each. That's almost nothing. You have regular homework assignments that are worth the same amount of points. So that's kind of the value of it. So the flip side of that is so you don't stress out on the tests either, because they're not like half your grade, for example. They're just a portion. I do use a point system, as I mentioned before, so I do not have weighted scoring. Every assignment is worth usually a fairly small number of points, and everything in the course totals up to 100 points. And so like if you have an assignment that's worth 4 points, that's 4% of your grade. And that's how you look at it. So little bits and pieces. You do have to get a C or better in order for this course to count in your degree program. That's 74 points. I usually do kind of an audit as we get towards the end of the course. So if you guys are maybe in risk of not passing, I will send out emails and contact you and tell you that, hey, you need to do something because you're not going to reach the points and pass. Let's talk, you know. Conversely, if you have something going on in your life that's throwing you off course, let me know. I can cut you some slack, you know. I felt really bad too. I had one student during the summer that all of a sudden like stopped coming to class and wasn't doing their homework, and I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to drop them. And it turns out, oh no, they're in a hospital. They've been in the hospital and you know, all plugged up with tubes and stuff, you know, and couldn't even get on a computer. Right? But then when I found out, you know, we made accommodations. So communication is really key. If you got something going on, we can be pretty flexible and help you out, but we can't if we don't know. So, but if you communicate, there's always something that we can do to make it work, right? All right, so exams and quizzes, 2 exams, a midterm and a final. And I want you to note the exams are open book, open notes, open internet, phone a friend. They're kind of like that because you take them on your own time. So we never do the tests in the classroom. So we won't come in one day and it's like, okay, today is test day, and we just sit here and take the test. You do that on your own time. The way I look at it is we have so little time in the classroom together that we use the time to learn something, not to waste it doing tests. And so when I release a test, you get like a 1-week window in which you can complete it on your own time on the internet. And everything is based directly on your textbook and the stuff I talk about in class, which is also based on the textbook. So the first place you should look for answers is your textbook, not the internet. Right? So people will still Google stuff and get wrong answers, but whatever. All right, late work. As I mentioned last time, you know, typically every assignment will have a due date, and you want to get your assignment in before that due date hits. So if you turn it in on time, do what you're supposed to do, and do it right, you will get all your points. Pretty much a no-brainer. If it is late, then you will start to see reductions in points. And if it's more than 2 weeks late, the best you're going to get is half of those points. So you don't want to be in that situation. I also have this policy here, which is if you turn in something showing me work in progress by the due date, it's got to be, you know, before that due date hits, then I'm willing to give you another week to finish it without a late penalty. And it's not something you should take lightly. So I just want to see that you're working on it, even if it's not perfect or whatever, and then you get some more time. And that really can alleviate a lot of stress. So take advantage, folks. We also have this get out of homework free coupon I talked about in the other class. Same deal with this. You come in here, you screenshot this, turn it in place of the assignment, and you get 2 points. You can only use it once. And I always advise people, don't use it right away. Wait till the end of the course, like when the pressure is on and all your classes, that's a really good time to use it. But I just considered it a little bit of a safety net. If you do get into the situation where, you know, like the student who was in the hospital, let me know. I can always give you an incomplete on something. We've seen a lot of incompletes during the pandemic for a lot of reasons, COVID just being one of them. But people have also had a lot of upheaval in their lives. You know, people's living situations change, their work situations change. But you have to communicate with me in order to make that a reality. Next, let's take a look at the key dates here. So these are the dates for this course, very similar to what we just looked at. Same start and end dates, just different meeting times. Midterm grades will post by the 15th of October. And your last day to withdraw is November 12th for this course. I do have an academic calendar here too. And this kind of all fits on the screen, so it kind of gives you an idea of like all the point breakdowns and what chapters we're covering when. And the way that this kind of goes, folks, is we start out kind of gentle, right? And then it kind of ramps up in intensity pretty quickly. You want to get into the situation, and you guys need to be aware of this, that the amount of work that you're expected to do here can take many hours during the week. So aside from like the 4 hours that you're here, We usually estimate that you should probably be spending about 3 times that much on your own to do the work. And that's reading, watching the videos you need to watch, and working through the homework. And that's pretty important because when you start to think about that, well, if we're spending about 3-4 hours here, you know, well, that's about 12 hours a week. How am I going to squeeze that in? What'll happen is you'll be working on some of the homework, and it's all the little details that get you, right? So like you get most of the code, then that one thing's not working, and you'll spend like 20 minutes typing in all the code and 3 hours fixing the one thing that's not working. It's like that, and you have to prepare for that time-wise. There is a big time commitment when you're coding, and the more challenging of a coding class you get into, the more time you can expect to spend on working through the homework. And whenever you need help, or if you're stuck, remember, I'm always here to help you. So you're not on your own. And that's the other thing that we do here in class too. The extended time that we have together gives us a chance to work on those things. All right, then we have the college policies, and I think we talked about these. These all link up to the student handbook. So don't plagiarize, no drugs and alcohol, show up, no guns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And once again, the COVID-19 policy, make sure you have masks. You guys are all good. It seems like we all have them here in the classroom, so you're welcome to take one if you need it. These look like the fancy kind too. If you are symptomatic, and I'm just going to repeat this, Katrina, if you end up being symptomatic, don't come to class. Jump on Zoom and join us there, because the Zoom sessions will always be open. And we're also supposed to put in an incident report, so if somebody does truly come down with COVID in the classroom, test positive, we might be asked to stay off campus for a couple of weeks, just so you guys are aware of that. And unfortunately, when we started summer semester, we were looking to the fall. It's like, woohoo, we're going back to normal, and it seems like it's going the other direction right now. So it's kind of a scary thing. So things are starting to lock down. I saw an article, like I said earlier, that Racine is thinking about instituting an indoor mask order again for the city of Racine. So we'll see if that happens. I doubt that it will, but interesting to watch. All right, folks, that was the syllabus. And as we did in the previous class, what I'd like you guys to do is go to the discussion board and go to the syllabus acknowledgement thread and just simply hit the create thread button, which is up here, and create an entry saying that you've received the syllabus. As I normally tell people, I will not grade any of your work until you acknowledge the syllabus. And you don't have to type anything fancy here, just say, hey, I've read the syllabus, or I got the syllabus, I understand, something like that, and just hit submit, and you will earn points for that. You won't earn as many points in this class as the other class, or the orientation class. I'm giving 4 points just for acknowledging the syllabus. Here, I think it's a measly single point, but it is a required activity, and I usually attach a grade to it, by the way. All right. Does anybody have any questions on the syllabus before I kind of get out of that mode? You guys all okay? Okay. All right, so I'm going to move on now, and what I'm going to do is kind of introduce you to the course and the course shell. And I know some of you are seemingly adept with Blackboard. Is there anybody here who's never taken a class and used Blackboard before? You're the only one? All right, we will help you, but if you have questions, I know Blackboard can feel very overwhelming at first. And the other thing that I always like to point out to people as well is that people put their course shells together differently on Blackboard. So if you were to look at my Web Programming 1 course and maybe compare it to Wendy's, you'll notice that she'll probably have maybe a little bit different layout. She might have her menus in a different spot and things organized differently. You might also have taken other courses here where you're going to notice that a lot of instructors' course pages land on the announcements, right? So I'm a web guy, and I go, you know what? That's horrible. I don't want my course to land on announcements. That's really bad web design. You know that being a web teacher. And so I kind of hotwire it a little bit. So I create a home page where we land, and all the main units of instruction will be located right here on this main page. And I'm going to lift the veil here for just a moment so you can see the entirety of the course. So you can see this, all the units will appear one at a time. I do release them incrementally. So I don't just say, here's the whole course, have at it. No, because I don't want people rushing ahead. And sometimes I make changes to the content and improve things. And so I release things incrementally on purpose, one little nugget at a time. We have 9 units of instruction in 14 weeks, well, 13 since next Monday is off, to get through the content. So some units we will spend more than 1 week on, and other units we'll look at and then move on. Like the first one, which is getting started. So let's go there. And what I'd like to do here is really kind of walk through the anatomy of like how we do our courses. So now, okay, unit 1, 2, 3, that makes sense. Why on earth would I make my first unit 0? Why would I start with 0? You know, Alejo, that's spot on, right? So computers, humans, start counting 1, 2, 3, right? Computers start counting with 0 because computers look at the base 10 number system and say, well, we have 10 digits in that number system. The first one is 0, not 1, right? And then we go to 1. And so unit 0, so computers always start with 0, so I figured, hey, I'm going to start my courses that way too. So our getting started unit, which is just really kind of an introduction, it reiterates a lot of the stuff I've already told you. So there's our course description and competencies, our book information, my email address are all listed right there. I also have a little bit of a welcome message, but you're listening to me talk, so you can just skip over it. And then as I do in many of my units, I will have videos. Now you will notice that I have videos in here that come from classes that I taught. These look like they came from last summer, both for the full stack people, which are the accelerated people, the content's good, and from the regular people from last summer. And I do that quite a bit. So, you know, I record like this in the classroom very often. If I feel the stuff is already well recorded, I won't re-record it. Sometimes I make notes to myself, like students will notice, hey, it sounds horrible, or oh, you missed a part, or something like that, and I'll re-record it. But like the stuff that I'm recording here today will appear in this listing tomorrow. So, you know, if you're like, what did he say about the syllabus? Like you guys are going to go back. But if you wanted, you could go back and listen to it and review it. And I know, to me, it always seemed weird because I started recording in the classroom because I knew one day one student was going to be absent, and they said, could you please record it so that, you know, I can, you know, listen to it after. And then I started realizing that everybody in the classroom was going back and watching it. I'm like, okay, well, there's value there. And then I got to the point where I pre-recorded everything, and you don't have to come to the classroom and listen to me lecture, you know. And that's the whole idea of the flipped classroom and the blended classroom. So this part of the class where you guys are like, you know, falling asleep, you know, I get it. I've been there. I've been a student, right? They're like talking and talking and talking and nothing's happening. And, you know, you can do that at home. And better yet, if you're watching it on YouTube, and I'll just give you an example here. If I pop out to my gateway YouTube, wherever that happens to be, right, and you pull up one of my courses here. Oh, wrong account. That's what happens when you have too many Gmail accounts, right? All right, so, you know, just to give you an example. So here's like a video from one of my other classes. You know, we can watch it.
Welcome, everybody. We are in our first night of developing AS.
Right, so, yeah, I do that in every class. But there's tools. The neat thing about YouTube is all the tools that go with it. And some of the tools include the ability to change the speed of the video. So I'm a really big proponent of this. So when I go online and I watch videos to learn stuff, and it's like a 2-hour video or something, I come over here and I bump up the speed. I go like 1.5 or something and play it a little faster. So instead of a 2-hour video, now I have an hour and a half or hour 20 minutes or whatever it works out to be. And there's also the closed captioning that goes with it. There's a transcription available that you can download and look at. You can rewind, play it again, zoom in, yada, 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 yada. It just has so many advantages. So in some ways, I almost kind of like delivering my lecture better this way because you can listen to it how it works best for you, right? I will still go through and demonstrate stuff in class, sometimes reiterating exactly what's in the videos, and sometimes not. So I kind of get a feel for the class. If I'm seeing my video counts go up, like everybody in the class is watching them, I'm much less apt to lecture in the classroom and we go to code. The more advanced classes you take, I am completely flipped. So if you took like, I don't know, Java Programming 2 with me or something like that, I never lecture in the classroom. All we do is code. We just dig into the exercises. That's all, that's it, And then if people have questions, I just expect that, hey, you watched the video, you read the book, right? All right, let's code. Let's not waste time. And I get it. Sometimes people don't even bother, to read the book or watch the videos and still do okay. But generally speaking, people do better if they do ingest those materials. All right, so the other thing in this unit here is the syllabus acknowledgement, which we've just done. If you haven't, you can click this link. It'll take you to the discussion board, and you can drop in your acknowledgement. All right, I also have this little piece here. Just once again, get your book, don't wait. And for my money, I would suggest renting and an ebook. I think is a smart way to go. Let's talk now a little bit about hardware and software. And I'm going to try to get this a little bigger on the screen here. And we do get a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, it's a fair amount of people that will like email me before they come to Gateway, and it's like, hey, I'm new to college and I need to get a computer. What do you recommend, right? And we decided that in our department that we need to have people using a certain level of machine in order to be able to functionally do the work. And these are what we would call minimum specifications for doing this type of professional IT work. And so the first thing that we're going to recommend is you have Windows 10. And I want you to notice that we prefer that you have either the professional or the education versions. Now, most of us at home will have Windows 10 home, right? Because we buy a computer and that's what comes with it, right? And frankly, it's fine for just about all computing that you do, Hey, it works for Battlefield, why shouldn't it work for programming, right? This is kind of the mindset. But the reality is that there's features in the professional and the education version, which are in essence the same thing, that you do not get in regular Windows 10. File encryption, remote desktop, a couple of other tools, but those two are a real big one. Virtualization is another. And so we recommend those versions. Now, yes, question.
I can actually tell you all how to get it through Gateway. You guys know the Microsoft Azure, if you're enrolled in one of the cyber classes, like cybersecurity or networking, CCNA, you can go to the Microsoft Azure and there's a Windows, I did this myself and I have Windows 10 Pro. There's a Windows 8 Pro license there. And if you enter that in on Windows 10, it still counts as a Windows 10 upgrade. So it's free. It's a retail copy too, so you get to keep it.
Yeah.
So again, I've had that for like 3 years, so.
And that's exactly where I'm heading with this. We do have licenses available for you. So that is correct. You get it through the Microsoft Azure Cloud. I will talk you guys through doing that. We're actually going to do a little thing on it during the orientation class. It's not necessary to get started with, right? But when you move into your later courses and later semesters, you will find that it will be significantly helpful. And it's true, the license key does not expire. And it turns out that the education license is actually more powerful than the Pro license, believe it or not. It gives you all the features of Windows 10 Ultimate or Enterprise, depending on how you look at it. But Windows 10 is recommended. You can do the work with Windows 7 or Windows 8 if you have a machine that runs those. Although we would consider those insecure at this point, you really should move up to a different level of operating system. I get that some people will keep those running just because they love Windows 7 so much, or Windows 8 I don't hear that about, but Windows 7 I hear it about. And yes, you can functionally do all those things with those, but those operating systems are no longer supported by Microsoft, and therefore the way that they patch them makes them insecure. So you really should be on Windows 10. The reality is that Windows 10 is really probably more like Windows 16 or something. They come out with so many different versions. They usually put out 2 major upgrades a year for Windows. And if you guys are following any of the technical trades, they are about to release the next version, which it looks like they're going to jump the shark and call it Windows 11. We'll see. All right. In terms of the actual hardware, as I mentioned, we are very Windows-centric here at Gateway, so we prefer that you have a Windows machine. However, if you have a Mac, that's fine. If you have a Linux machine, that's also fine, but all the same hardware specs still apply. So in terms of a CPU, and that's like the brain of your computer, we do suggest that you have a modern i5. So not one from 10 years ago, that's at 1 gigahertz, but something that's modern, that's maybe at like a 3 gigahertz or 2 or above. And if possible, something even better than that, like an i7, an i9, a Ryzen, something of that nature, a high-end CPU with multiple cores. I recently upgraded my machine, that's about 6 months ago now, with the one that's sitting in front of me. And this is a 10th gen i7 with, I think, 8 cores, running at like, I don't know, some crazy gigahertz speed, I don't know. Very, very nice machine. In terms of the amount of memory you should have for your machine, we say 8 gigs of RAM is a functional minimum. And honestly, I think that we're probably departmentally going to recommend to jump to 16 as a minimum. But I would not even consider buying a computer myself if it didn't have 16 gigs of RAM on it. All the machines that are here in the lab all have 32 gigs of RAM on them, and that's really a more practical amount. Like you would go, oh my God, you don't even need that for the most intensive games. Okay, right. When you're playing a game, you're doing one thing at a time. When you're programming, sometimes you're like virtualizing operating systems, running an emulator, running a bunch of big IDEs, have like 20,000 browser tabs open, and you really hit that machine hard. And you will notice a difference. So like when you guys like watch me compute, and I'll click on something and you see it just snap up like that, that's because of the machine, right? And you're in your own machine and you clicked on it and you're like, I'm waiting, I'm waiting, I'm waiting. Oh, there it is. Those seconds count, right? And in the IT world, if I'm waiting 30 seconds for a screen to come up, that's telling me, well, if I do that 20 times a day or 100 times a day, I'm wasting an hour of my day. I'm getting paid $100 an hour or whatever I'm getting paid. That time is money. So that's the reason right there to switch to the faster machine. But we have a problem going on in IT right now. You guys know what it is? There's a chip shortage. So it's really hard to get your hands on machines. I got lucky, I got my machine before that really kicked in, but some of the major factories over in Taiwan have problems with water supply and getting the materials. And now that Afghanistan's in a state of turmoil, we're going to have even more problems. Because you know what Afghanistan is #1 for in the world? All the rare earth minerals that go into building circuit boards and CPUs. And now it's in the hands of the Taliban. So it's very interesting. So why was Russia there for a long time? Why was the US there for a long time? That's why, folks, because they have something that the rest of the world needs. All right, in terms of hard drive space, we recommend at least a 500 gig hard drive. And I'm going to say functionally, I would go for a terabyte hard drive, which is twice that size. And if possible, have an SSD, at least for your primary operating system drive. The functional difference between having a solid state hard drive and a spinning platter hard drive is huge. My previous machine, which I still have, kind of falling apart, but still have it. I started out with a spinning platter hard drive, with, it's kind of like a CD drive, basically. And once it was all loaded up with stuff, it would take me like 2, 3, 4 minutes to boot up and get to the point where I could use the machine, because everything's loading and it takes a while. Pop in an SSD, it's up and running and ready to go in 20 seconds. Talk about a time saving. So if you're buying a computer, don't buy one without an SSD in it. Don't waste the money. And buy as big a one as you can afford, because the performance difference is so huge. I can't even tell you. Now, the one spec that usually gets people, and you want to confuse the salespeople at Best Buy, ask them this question, right? You also need to have a machine, if you're putting your money into a machine, that's capable of what we call virtualization. Virtualization is where we create a software window, if you think of it that way, where you can run and load other operating systems onto your computer while you're using your computer. So I could be sitting here running Windows 10, and I could run a virtual machine of Linux, like a full-blown computer system that just comes up in a window. Now, why do you do that? Well, you do that because when you're testing software, you don't want to blow up your own system. You blow up the virtual system. Or if I'm creating apps for Android, how do I test them? Well, what if I don't have an Android phone? What if I have an Apple phone and I'm writing Android stuff? Well, then we create emulators inside of Windows that simulate Android, so we can write the application and push it into the simulated environment. And it takes a certain level of machine to do that. Once again, not the $200 or $300 machine that you get from Walmart. Right? Usually to get that level of machine, you're looking at about $800-900 or above, typically. You can get them cheaper, but and a lot of times you will walk into a store and say, "Hey, is this machine capable of virtualization?" Oh, what's that? That's what you'll get from the salespeople, because for as smart as they are and they know their graphics card and whatever, that's something they never really touch, so they don't know how to answer it. And the only way often you can find out is to boot into the BIOS setup screen and go through the screens and go, there it is. And it's something that you have to turn on to make it work, because it's not automatically on. But once you have that turned on, now your machine can do all sorts of crazy powerful things. And really what VTX does is it allows you to take a portion of your memory, a portion of your hard drive and your CPU, and dedicate it to the virtual environment. And so it runs in an isolated platform. Very ironically, that virtualization techniques is how most servers run. They run a host operating system and we virtualize on top of it. So the stuff we're connecting to isn't actually real. It's a simulated computer system running on top of another one. And then to blow your mind, sometimes that runs on top of another simulated system. And so it's kind of like Inception, where you're going to dream inside the dream and you don't know where you are actually. But that's an important feature, and where you tend to utilize that stuff is usually with app development and mobile development. So at the tail end of your program, you will certainly need that stuff. But if you're spending money now, hey, get a machine that can do it. And it's a lot of fun to play with too. All right, software, I think we already talked about this. Windows 10 is fine. If you're on a Mac, hopefully you have a newer OS. And with Linux, that's a little bit more, say agnostic. You can, different distros have different capabilities. Is anybody here a Linux person? Anybody have run Ubuntu or Linux Mint or anything? Okay, no. All right, that's fine. I do have some students that are pretty hardcore. One of them, and this is kind of an interesting story. So I have one student right now who's only taken our program online. And she used to live in Massachusetts, right? So not even in Wisconsin. And then she and her husband built a small home trailer and then started driving around the country. She's still taking her classes. And then the last time I talked to her, she was in Costa Rica. doing her classes from down there, and she runs Ubuntu Linux. She doesn't even use Windows to do any of her work. And so not only is she remote, going off of, like, tethering off of her phone in like a little trailer home kind of thing, she's also running Linux and doing all the work, and it's pretty cool, just to show you that it's possible. And what her goal is in life is to be a web developer that doesn't live anywhere, that she just goes wherever she goes and does her stuff and sits on the beach, having her Mai Tai and coding or whatever, so hey, we all have dreams, and that's one of them. All right, so whatever operating system you're using, make sure it's up to date and patched. And a modern web browser, so I mean, Windows does come with Edge, but that's not really what we can consider the professional's choice. What browsers do you guys use?
I use Brave, Mozilla.
Okay. Chrome. Most people will say Chrome. Some people will do Firefox. You've mentioned Brave, right? And that's one of my favorites. That's actually down here, which is a security-based browser system. We will explore it. Most people are completely unaware of that browser, but it's a Chrome variant that has basically a pop-up blocking, ad blocking, security features right out of the box. And there's no plugins required. It just does it. So it's pretty cool from that standpoint. Also, we suggest that you have access to an Office suite. So that could be either Microsoft Office, which you get for free through Gateway, or you can use the Google App Suite, which has Google Docs and Sheets and all that to do your work, whatever you prefer. But one of the things you might have to do is create some documents in here, so you do need access to that. So whatever you're comfortable with there, we do not coerce a choice on that. We will use FTP software. We might even get to that today. We'll see how that goes. And then various editing tools. And from the most primitive standpoint, we can do any coding for any computer programming using the most primitive of text editors. You don't really need special tools. However, right, there are better tools than others. Some of them end up being a preference. And so I'll talk about those. And I certainly have my own preferences, and you will find yours. And my feeling on this is like, hey, if you like using that tool, use that tool. That works for you. I'll show you the ones I'm using, and I like mine for a certain reason, and I kind of stick with them. But some of the more popular ones that we'll start with are like Notepad++ and Visual Studio Code. But we will explore more powerful IDEs as well. But the tool that you code with is really up to you, right? It's not a coercion. But what a lot of people find if they're brand new is, hey, you know what? This is what Ty's using, so I think I'm going to use the same thing, so I can follow along, right? And that's absolutely fine. But don't restrain yourself from trying something new just because you don't know it. Because sometimes you discover amazing products that way. And sometimes I have students that find products are like, hey, Ty, have you ever tried, whatever? I'm like, oh, wow, this is really cool. Okay, I'm switching to it too. That's how it happened with Brave. What a student showed me Brave, and I'm like, oh, hey, I can swing with this. This is a great browser. We'll also talk about graphics editing a little bit. So part of doing web involves working with images, and understanding how images kind of resolve on the screen. And so you will eventually need to have a graphics editing program. Now, you can use the stuff that's built into Windows. You really don't need anything fancy. Professionals, though, frankly, will typically use the Adobe Creative Suite, which does cost quite a bit of money. So I'm talking like Photoshop, Illustrator, and those tools. But there are great free equivalents that we can point you to. And some people like the free ones better, I have the Adobe Creative Suite at home. And, my daughter is an artist, and I'm like, I was like, why aren't you using Illustrator or Photoshop? She goes, well, I like whatever I'm using better. And it's like, it's just freeware though. It's like, no, but I like how the tools work better, So it's really kind of a workflow thing, and it's a preference, So we will give you lots of tips on software, but ultimately we don't really need anything too special when it comes down to it. Now, I had this little entry here in this unit too about Zoom. And this is really kind of a common sense guide. These are not rules, right? Alejo, you've been in Zoom sessions with me, so you know how kind of informal I am about them. You know, some instructors will say, "Hey, turn your camera on," and some don't care. You know, some say turn your mic on, some don't care. The general, you know, rule of thumb is you're going to run the session the way that the instructor is comfortable. I can, like, if you're being noisy or whatever, I can always mute you if you're in a Zoom session. But the way that we're mostly going to use it in the classroom is to do what I'm doing now, so that you guys can see my screen. And sometimes I might even share files or links with you that way. So like if I have like a link, so for example, like Alejo's in the session here with me, and you know, I might say, hey, you know, go to this website or whatever, you know, there's the information, so we can chat back and forth. The other thing that kind of becomes neat, so like we're in the pandemic, and if it wasn't the pandemic, let's say students sitting here having a problem, I'll just come right up and do it. Hey, here's how you fix it, you know, not social distancing at all. So now what I can do is I can actually take control of your machine through Zoom and remote control it and show you what to do if need be. It's kind of a fun tool. Plus the fact that we can record, like we're recording right now. Of course, the part where I walked away, the voice is going to fade out. But hey, whatever. Tough luck. You guys are all in the classroom. But ultimately, Zoom becomes this backup mechanism for us as well. So if you can't be in the classroom, whatever your situation, jump in on Zoom. I still count it as attendance. Right? Hopefully, we don't get into any sort of like lockdown mode. You know, like I said before, if you know somebody in here tests positive, I think the policy is we all have to stay away from campus for 2 weeks, including me. So I hope that doesn't happen. So wash your hands, all that, you know. So be safe. But Zoom's our backup tool, and we will use it whenever we can. Just some common sense things here. Any questions on any of that? Because I think we've covered most of the topics here. Yes, sir.
So I have two things. One, again, it sounds like you're gonna go over it, but the Visual Basic, you can get the code again on Azure for free. You can get like I think the highest one too, like the business grade Visual Basic license off there for free. And then the other thing was for your next computer, you didn't have that in there. You might want to make sure you have like it meets the requirements for Windows 11. That's also going to be a free upgrade if you meet your spec. So there's a TPM switch, so that's also in the BIOS. And then you have to be able to secure boot, but like every computer can do that. So.
Yeah, most of the modern ones can do that. We will talk about the whole Azure cloud thing as we go. We'll do a whole little session on it. It's not really a primary concern right now because we don't need any of the tools that are offered there. But what you're referring to, can you remind me your name again?
Luke.
Luke. Thank you, Luke. You know, is we have all these resources that we get here as students and faculty for free from you know, Microsoft just being one source. And some of the software that's available is super expensive software. So like, for example, if you were curious in like building a Windows server, you can go into the Azure cloud and download the data center edition of Windows Server for free. And that's like a very, very expensive piece of software. We're talking, you know, $1,000 plus. And here it is for the taking, you know, and you can keep the license. So that is a big advantage. Now for the stuff we're going to do in here, is it necessary? Not really. You know, so, but I do like my students to know about upgrading their version of Windows because it does unlock some features that eventually you do need. And you know, my perspective on all this, folks, is that since you guys are all aspiring to be IT professionals, you know, you need to work with the powerful tools. You know, it's kind of like if you're a race car driver, you're not driving a Prius. You know what I mean? You're driving something with some horsepower and probably with a manual transmission, and that's going to be us. You know, and so the way you know, I'm kind of a geek on this stuff, and I hope you guys are too. I mean, I got into it because I really dug technology, and I'm naturally inclined to explore it. You know, like whatever it is about it, I might spend hours trying to figure out a computer problem. You know, because that's just the nature of who I am. I hope you guys are the same way, and that's the kind of like thirst that you should have to succeed in this field. All right, so this covers Unit 0. That's pretty much what's in here. The syllabus thing being the most important. What we're going to do next is we are going to go into Unit 1, but I'm looking at the clock. We've been going for a while now, and it's time for a break. So I have a pattern that I usually follow, which is I do about an hour in the classroom, and we take a 5-minute break. And in this class, that means we'll take at least 2 of those breaks. And the second one will usually be longer. I will come back and we'll start talking about these topics, but I'm going to pause the recording. Actually, I'm going to end this recording. So this recording ends here.